what we focus on grows. So if we are focusing on all the ways that our partner is failing us or failing our child, we're giving that energy. And giving it energy is like watering those weeds.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Birth Lounge podcast. How are you? No, truly, how are you today? I don't know if you realize just how much I genuinely love hanging out with you each week. Honestly, it's the reason that we took the podcast from one show a week to 2 shows a week, because I love, from the bottom of my heart, showing up for you every single week. When you guys listen and then you drop into my DMs or you leave comments on Spotify, it makes me the happiest girl in the world. I love nothing more as a nurturer and a teacher than to bring you information that improves your life, that gives you a better birth, that empowers you to find your voice and use it. I want you to find this sense of confidence, to be so informed that you have this radical responsibility that you're unshakable, you're unpenetrable, that no matter what happens in your life, in your birth, in your pregnancy, or with your children, that you know without a shadow of a doubt that not only are you the best one to make that decision for that baby, but that you know the right answer. It's really an honor to be able to say that so many of you, over 200,000 of you every week, give me the joy to educate you, to show up for you, to bring guests to you so that you can have an easier, happier, healthier, better life. I want parenthood to be joyous for you. I want it to be something that you find a lot of pride in, that you wake up each morning and you're eager to see your children. I don't want it to be something that you feel like you need to escape from, or when you wake up in the morning, it starts with a big sigh and thinking, not this again. I really want you to be enjoying life. And so if there's a topic or a guest that you want to hear or hear from on the show, I want to encourage you to reach out to me. You can send me an email at tranquilitybyhehe@gmail.com. You can find me on any social and give me a DM, or you can leave it in the comment section on Spotify. My team and I truly do scour the comments to make sure that when people are commenting, we are engaging back with them in really cool discussion that helps us bring you a better show and helps you have a better experience listening. If you have ever learned anything from the show, or you have found this show to be entertaining, or it helped you have a better birth, I've got 2 asks for you, and they both will take you less than 5 minutes. One of them will take you less than 30 seconds. The first ask is the quickest. I ask that you just share this with another mama. Share it with somebody that you think could also benefit from the value that the show brings, so that they too can have a better birth and an easier postpartum, where they can really find that joyous parenthood. The second ask is if you wouldn't mind leaving a review for the show. It helps other mamas, strangers, so not friends that you would send it to, find the show. And it helps us get recognized by larger platforms so that we can make even more of an impact. You can leave a 5-star review anywhere that you listen on any platform. And if you feel so called, you can drop your review into my Instagram DMs, and I would love to share that with my community over there. All right, you guys, on to today's episode. Now, in episode 225, I had on my friend Ashley Mariani, who is a registered social worker specializing in couples' perinatal mental health. Well, we talked about how birth trauma impacts your partner and intimacy after birth. But you guys, I heard loud and clear over and over and over again that you wanted more. You wanted to hear about the masculine and the feminine energies in birth, how they differed, how they worked together, how they could be symbiotic, what you needed from your male partner, but how did you actually cultivate that with them? Luckily today, I am joined by my friend and someone I have admired for a long time, and I just recently finished her book, Transformed by Birth. Dr. Britta Bushnell is a mother, veteran childbirth educator, celebrated speaker, mythologist, and specialist in childbirth, couples, and parenting. For the last 20 years, Dr. Britta has worked with individuals and couples as they prepare for birth. She is so cool because she uses stories, symbols, and human behavior derived from mythology and psychology to help paint a picture of how you and your partner can actually properly prepare for birth. She also sees birth as a rite of passage. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about exactly how that feminine and masculine energy not only impact birth, but how it ebbs and flows in birth. We're going to talk about things like how you can't control everything that happens in labor, and the idea of letting go of the pressure to be perfect. What you need to know about having a strong relationship and emotional support going into labor. She's going to talk to us about flexibility and being faced with uncertainty and how we can draw up the courage to let go of the idea that if birth doesn't go according to plan, then it's all shot. If you are someone who strives to always make the right decision or always do things the quote unquote right way, then today's episode is going to be so good for you, and you probably are going to have an inner transformation. I'm so stoked for you to hear today's episode all about fostering connection and resilience through emotional support from your partner in the labor process. So without further ado, Dr. Britta, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
I'm so stoked to have you. So the audience already knows that I read your book. They know that I'm expecting my own little baby of my
I
own.
know.
They know.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you
So
so
excited.
much. And they know that over the last couple weeks, I have really been trying to not necessarily step out of that doula brain, but really use it in a different way. Not to doula myself. I don't know if that's necessarily possible. I always recommend that everyone has a doula, even doulas themselves. But I'm trying to take what I know as a doula and apply it to my own self. And I have actually found that to be a little bit hard. I have found that I really need to disconnect from that doula brain and step more into almost back into learning, but in a different way. I'm learning now as a mom. I'm learning now as a birther, not as a coach, not as a guidance. I'm learning now as the doer. So, can you start with the idea that you talk so much about in your book, that birth is a rite of passage, and it's something that you can only experience as a mom, as a birther, as someone who's going through this, because as a doula, I always thought, and it is true to an extent, I always thought, I'm so prepared. I'll just know what to do. And I do believe that's true. I have felt that since. But I also feel like there's so much I don't know, even though I know so much.
Yes. Oh, what a great question, first of all. And I love that you're thinking about this because that actually speaks volumes in its own right. I think there's something really important to be able to pause and check in and understand that the journey that you're going through right now, as a woman, as a mother, as somebody heading into birth, is different than that which you have walked alongside somebody else for all of these years. And it is different. It absolutely will be valuable for you. I don't want to say that it isn't. It is valuable to have that embodied knowledge and that wisdom and experience. And there's a certain amount of actually stripping that away that is also now needed. That is about, there's so much of giving birth happens in the body. And a lot of doula work and understanding and wisdom and knowledge happens in the head. And the head is not what births, the body births. And so shifting from intellectual knowledge to embodied knowing, embodied learning is kind of key now.
I feel that like deep in my soul. I think that's where that shift is happening of I know so much, but I also know nothing.
And isn't that an interesting thing even to speak to? Because
Mhm.
one of the things I say in my book, and I say it often with people that I work with, is a lot of people who are birth workers come to work with me. So it's not uncommon because they're looking for something that is different
Yeah.
than more information. They got the information. They've got all the information. You've got all the information. Midwives I've worked with, OBs I've worked with, it's like they've got the information, but there's something different that's happening in their bodies. And they're realizing that their journey in birth, they know a lot about birth, they know nothing about their birth.
Yeah. I keep telling my husband, I know a lot about labor, but I know nothing about birthing, like actually doing it, because I've never been pregnant. I've never had a baby. But what I will tell you is, my intuition, so I've always been a very intuitive person. Listeners, you guys know this. I talk about it all the time. I make a lot of decisions based on intuition, and I don't actually need a lot of data. I'm not someone who's like, all right, my intuition led me here. Let me see if I can find the data. If the data backs it up, then great. I love that for me, but I don't always need that. The stock market is a really great example of that. My husband and I make very different choices in the stock market, and it's funny when I went out in those situations because he's like, you made such a reckless choice. And I'm like, yeah, but my gut knew, dude. I knew what to do. I am someone who follows my intuition almost always. My intuition has been so strong since I've been pregnant. It has just been like, it's no longer little nudges, which is what I always had before. They were like little nudges. It always felt like, ooh, that's a little sign. But since I've been pregnant, it is like my intuition screams at me. It's like so loud, I couldn't ignore it if I wanted to.
Yeah. So, what is it telling you? What is
Well,
something that it's telling you that you need today?
yeah, there's nothing that's necessarily right now in this moment, but I've got two examples. My first example is that when we went to our 8-week ultrasound, I actually had flown in from a client, a travel client. I did a travel client from weeks, I guess, 6 to 8. And the day that I landed, so I'm 8 weeks pregnant, but 10 on paper. So it was a 10-week appointment. I flew in, I landed that morning, and on the plane, I connected with the baby and I said, you know what? We're so excited to see you today. I literally cannot wait to meet you. And something dropped in my head and was like, this little stinker may not show up. And so I just said, you know what? I trust that you're in there. If you don't want to say hi today, you do not have to. You're safe to. And I think we're very excited to meet you. And I also think that if you don't, your dad is really not going to appreciate it. But I trust you. And it was just kind of funny. I'm sitting in a seat by myself and I'm just kind of like laughing to myself. And around me, the people around me were probably like, this woman is nuts. Like I didn't even look pregnant. I'm rubbing on my belly. I'm laughing. They're like, this lady, what's going on with her? And
You
we
were
get to
connecting. Yeah.
totally. And the airplanes are loud. And so it's a great time to just like meditate and go inward. And I landed and we go to the appointment. He literally picks me up from the airport. We go straight to the appointment. And the midwife says, do you want to listen to the baby? And I was like, yes, but only through a Doppler. And she said, okay, just so you know, you are quite early. So you may not hear the baby now. And I just made a comment like, I don't think we're going to, but let's see if we can find them. And she's digging around and she's digging around and we take breaks because I'm very peculiar about like how long we have the Doppler up against my belly and stuff. And so we're taking breaks, we're doing this, we're taking breaks. And I don't think we're going to hear him today. And I'm basically laughing the whole time because it was so funny to me. It was like the baby had told me like, today's not the day. I just don't feel like it. I don't want to say hi. And my husband is freaking out. He is like so nervous. We get in the car and I'm just like, I'm so nervous. How do we even know? And I was like, dude, I know. Like, I'm well pregnant. The baby is fine. I knew before we were coming in here. That's why I said the comment that I said about, I don't think we're going to hear them, but let's see if we can find them. He was like, I just don't know how you're so calm about this. I just don't understand. And I was like, I think it's because I'm pregnant and you're not. And also, he's in the medical field, so he relies very heavily on machinery, technology. That's where he gets his data. And I have the privilege as the pregnant person to have that intuition. And I feel very connected to this child. And I just know that they are in there. The other example is that I know I want feminine energy around me. There is something telling me that I'm not going to have an actual doula at my birth. I have this feeling that it's going to be a friend that I'm very spiritually connected with as my birth attendant, a midwife for sure. I'll have medical providers for sure, but
Mhm.
not a doula in the traditional sense. I just feel like there's something in my gut that says I have the knowledge that a doula has, and I actually need the spiritual that nobody else is going to be able to provide me. And now I've just been asking the universe, like, who is that person?
Oh, I
When you're
love
ready
that.
to show me, please let me know who that person is because I'd like to give them as much heads up as possible that I want them to be at my birth.
Beautiful. I love all of that. That you're checking in and paying attention to those messages and that intuitive and all of that. And that's definitely a piece that is different than the doula brain. Although the doula brain has intuitions too, right? I mean, when we're on call or we're working with a client, we definitely have felt senses going on, but that the ones you're speaking to much more come from that parental place. And I also, one of the other things, just to go back to the question that you asked me, is that one of the things that I think is really powerful for doulas to practice, doulas, midwives, OBs who are going through their own labor, birth, parenting journey, is the practice of receiving help.
That's hard.
Oh, you're scrunching up your face. Yeah.
That's so hard.
That would probably be the thing that I would highlight. Like the process. I'm remembering a midwife who took my class with her husband, and she said, I signed up for this class for him.
Mm.
And she burst into tears and said, I'm realizing I needed it more than he did, because she actually needed to step into a place with her husband of saying, this is our journey together. And I loved that you, in the stories you were just sharing, that you spoke about your husband and his way of feeling connected and your way of feeling connected, and how each of those is valid and important.
Mm.
And so now one of the big differences that you're going through as a becoming a mom is that you're on this journey as an individual and as a part of a couple, and you are family building. And that family building is something that is wildly transformative and different than dueling, very different.
Yeah.
And that does speak to the rite of passage, that you are a rite of passage is a transition from one state of being to another. And you are now on that threshold. You are on the threshold of, and in that liminal space between worlds right now, where you aren't yet a mom, but you aren't not a mom. You're kind of in that betwixt between place. And while you're connecting with your baby and clearly in a mothering role, I often say there's a difference when you have to strap them into the car seat.
Yeah.
when right now, to keep your baby safe, you need to eat well and you need to buckle your seatbelt. On the other side of birth, it's different.
Yeah.
You have to do some things that are very specific to help them thrive.
Mm.
And that changes your identity as well.
Mm.
And in that identity transformation, there's absolutely the part we talk about, which is the blossoming of new identity, of becoming a mom and feeling that love, and what happens with your partner and witnessing them become a parent. And there is also a death and a loss of a part of your former self.
Mm.
And that's part that we don't tend to like to talk about in this society. We don't like to talking about birth and death in the same sentence. Those are awkward bedfellows.
They are. I've talked about this a lot, and this is definitely going to make me cry because I am going through a little bit of a mourning of just the life I'm leaving behind. And I think that I'm very worried I'm going to miss it. I know I'm going to love being a mom. I'm not concerned about that at all. It's always been something that I've so desperately wanted. I've talked openly on the internet too that this baby came at a little bit of a different time than what we had planned for, which is so funny for many reasons. I think it was the universe showing me I don't always need to be in control. And I think that this baby is probably going to crack me wide open in the same way of you don't get to control me. And I think that there was a piece of my husband and I that when it got to the time that we were quote unquote supposed to start trying, I'm not sure we would have actually pulled the trigger because we love our life so much as it is. We are dinks, double income without kids, with a dog, so we're dink wads. And it has been a big joke I had online going for the last year or so is that we love being dinkwads and we're good dinks. We love to travel and we get massages and we wake up on a Saturday and zoom off to another country and we really like that freedom. And we get to sleep in on Saturdays and we get to stay out late at night if we want. And the only real responsibility that we have to pick up and leave is finding someone to care for our dog. And we have so many people in our life that love our dog. It's so easy. It's not going to be like that with a child. And I'm just a little bit mourning the relationship that my husband and I have because I know it's going to change so much, not necessarily in a bad way, but I've just witnessed so many families, hundreds of families over the last 10 years that I know it's inevitable. We are going to have a period of being ships passing in the night. And it's just my favorite time of day is being able to sit on the couch with him. And I know that's going to be a time that I miss so much. And it is something that I find myself being very sad about, even though I'm really looking forward to what we have coming. It's very weird to be in a space of like sadness and extreme excitement.
I think it's really important. And I'm so grateful for you sharing this in the way that you are, because I think it's challenging in the messaging of the overculture, that those energies that tell you how it's supposed to be or should be. I label that as the energy of the overculture. And it tells us we're supposed to just be happy
All the time for everything.
pretty much. Or if we're sad, we're sad. But we don't talk a lot about the complexity of emotions. I have an ampersand sign, an and sign over my shoulder on purpose, because the and is so important. You are absolutely in a place of mourning and great joy.
Yeah.
They go together. They're not, it's one of the sayings that I love, that I've learned through some of my Buddhist practice, is this too belongs. And so here you are in joy and excitement and acknowledging there's mourning.
Yeah.
This too belongs. This too belongs. And that it matters.
You want to know something else that I'm mourning is my identity, because I can feel that my identity is going to change so radically and not necessarily voluntarily. It just has to as a mom. And there is a little bit of, I don't want to say resentment because I don't resent him. It's just I'm hyper aware that my husband's life is probably not going to change. If we can't find a babysitter, he still gets to go to the Christmas party. If we can't find a babysitter, he can still go represent our family at the wedding. If we can't find a babysitter, he still gets to go to dinner and drinks with our friends. Now, will our family choose to maybe make some different boundaries for our own family? Maybe. We haven't had that discussion yet. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, without those boundaries, those personal kind of factors, a man's life doesn't really have to change that much to be a dad. Whereas a woman's life changes radically involuntarily. You are the one that's feeding that baby. You primarily are the one getting up. If you don't have a babysitter, then you stay home with that baby. And it's something that's very, very much on my mind, is that, by default, I'll be the default parent. I know that we can put boundaries around that, and I know that families work that out, but just on a very basic level, without kind of getting in the weeds, that is just really on my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that those are valuable conversations to be having ahead of time around what it is that does matter and what feels right to the two of you, knowing that it can also change.
Hmm.
It can also change. There's a couple of things that are floating into my mind right now that I want to address around that, which is one, my brother and his wife actually taught me the idea of lead parenting as opposed to primary parenting. Primary sounds fixed. It's like, this is the fixed situation. And what they were doing when their children were babies was choosing who was lead parent at a given time. And they were each very successful in their businesses and had demands on them at different times. And so it was like, tag, your lead parent. And then the other one would be lead parent, and actually transition that role, that mantle of responsibility. And it was really interesting to watch to them have that in this place where I have so often thought of primary parenting as a fixed identity. And I don't know that it has to.
Mm.
And then the other thing I'll share is, I mean, my husband and I have two boys that I gave birth to and a bonus daughter. So there's three of them. And with our boys, it was really important to my husband. I think I fell in love with my husband because I was like, oh, he's going to be an awesome dad. Like there was just so much about this guy that I was like, oh, yeah, I can see having kids with him. And now 31 years later, he's a phenomenal dad and a great partner as well. And one of the things that was really important was for me to let him stumble and fail and not rush in and not rescue because I knew how to do it. Well, how did I learn how to do it? I learned how to do it because in my head was, I'm the mom, I got to figure this out. And so I did. I needed to give him the respect and opportunity to do the same for himself.
I definitely think that's going to be somewhere where I struggle. So my master's is in human development and family studies, and I've spent the last 10 years in early childhood and birth work and swaddling babies and sleep training babies and watching people breastfeed and helping them through challenges and talking to couples about finding that balance. So I too come to the table being like, I know this stuff and I know the quote unquote right thing to do. And I think it's going to be a huge learning curve for me to say that just because it's my way doesn't mean it's the only way. And I think that's going to be super important for me to say, you tap out when you need to tap out. You come and get me when you need me, but I'm not going to step in and take over for you. And I'm going to have a learning curve there for sure.
And you are in a position of power that is super important to acknowledge. And part of what I mean by that is going to sound a little different than you might think. You have the power to help him succeed by letting him fail.
Talk to us more about that. I think so many women out there are like, all right, but it irks me to death to hear my baby cry. And like, I could get them to be quiet in 2 minutes and it takes my husband 20. And I'm just like crawling the walls, wanting
Right.
to know what the hell he's doing in there. Why can't he get our baby to settle? So dive into
Yeah.
that. Help us
Yeah.
really find some peace in that.
Yeah. Oh, it is so tricky. It is so hard. I want to first just acknowledge that feeling of, I know I could go in there and just take care of
Fix
this.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Is big. And the success of their relationship often it is made through the working through of those challenges of how do I do this?
Hmm.
If you swoop in and rescue him or the baby, you're actually interrupting their relationship building. They're building a relationship. Now, can you offer suggestions before they go in? Yeah, I like to say it's really important to be in the same parenting book, ideally in the same parenting chapter. You do not need to be on the same page. The
Hmm.
same page is overrated.
Hmm.
Kids actually benefit from having some variability in their caregiving.
I've always said that.
Yeah, so see, but it's harder to remember when you're actually in that parenting moment where your heart is ripping open because you're hearing the struggle
Mm-hmm.
and having a partner who stays present with their child through the struggle is more important having your child know that their parent stays with them through the struggle is way more important than whether or not they go to sleep in 20 minutes or 5 minutes. Way more important.
So that is like their bonding time. That
Yeah.
is the time that they are getting to know each other and they're getting to know what each other likes and doesn't like and how they operate together and what kind of team they can be together.
Yes. And there's that part of so often that shows up, particularly for women who have given birth, that I don't know what's happening, I just got to figure it out vibe, that we are like, I'm the mom, I got to figure this out, I'm going to figure it out. We rob our partners of having that same opportunity because we have had a moment of figuring it out. Or partners who say, you've got the plumbing, you've got the equipment, also robs themselves of an opportunity to expand the child's capacity to navigate struggle.
Mm.
There's you've probably heard about this, but in different cultures they talk about it in different ways. So sometimes referred to as lawnmower parenting or snowplow parenting. California, it's more lawnmower, right?
Often it's snowplow.
It might be snowplow, right? But that idea that as parents, our job is to clear the obstacles. And this does not help our children. It actually makes them become non-functional in ways that are necessary as adults.
You build no resilience. So then, anytime they face any obstacle in life, they crumble, not because they're weak, but because you haven't taught them the skills, because you haven't built the foundation to give them the tools that they need to say, wow, this shit sucks, but I can
Right.
keep going. Or, wow, that person was so mean. I'm not going to talk to them anymore. And I also know that what they said about me is not true. Wow, today was horrible. Nothing went right. I'm so lucky I get to do this over tomorrow. And instead, you've taught them basically nothing. Not I don't think that was anybody's intention.
Of
You
course not.
never want your kids to struggle, but that's just not reality. When they leave your home, even when they're outside of your home, but they still live in home, they're going to encounter people who aren't kind to them. They're going to encounter struggles. They're going to encounter things that are hard, and you must build those skills of resiliency and being able to keep going and critical thinking skills to help your children overcome those things.
Yes, absolutely. Including letting them know that their other parent is there for them
And capable.
and capable, which is so important, especially with fathers, because we want to be raising children today who understand that fathers can nurture, that men have feelings. And another one of my teachers, Sokni Rinpoche, talks about how important in parenting it is to have a strong back and a soft front. So it's like strong back parenting is clear boundaries, clear expectations, responding in a way that is solid and clear. Soft front is loving, I'm here, I'm available to you. And often parents do it the opposite. They're all wobbly in their spine, meaning they're like real allowing of their kids to do all kinds of things. And they do this, that, and the other. And that's soft back. And then when their kid does something they don't like, they get hard front. What'd you do? What are you doing? How? And that is so challenging for children. Instead, strong back, soft front. Be open-hearted, available, clear, boundaried, solid, reliable, consistent. That's the
Predictable.
yeah.
So, something that has popped into my brain that as you talk, I am very lucky. I have a partner much like you. We dated for 11 years before we got married, and I knew instantly when we went on our first date. It wasn't even a real sit down dinner date. We went to coffee, and I went home and I told my roommates, I am going to marry that man. And they were like, okay, all right, whatever. And I was like, no, I am. He is the one. And I knew instantly he's going to be a great partner. He's going to be an amazing protector without controlling me. He's going to be a wonderful provider and still give me freedom. He's going to be a fantastic dad. I could just see all of it. And it has all come to fruition exactly like I knew it would. It's just like we were so soul connected. However, not everyone is as lucky as you and I are to have a present partner. Not everybody is as lucky as you and I are to have a partner who wants to be involved or has those skills. Sometimes they truly don't have the desire. And then sometimes they're not involved in present because they themselves don't have the skills and they are afraid. They're too afraid to show up. They're too afraid to learn. They're too afraid to ask for help. For the people who are listening that are like, I don't have Mr. Britta and I don't have a Mr. HeHe. What do I do? So talk to those women who they're struggling to actually get their partners to want to be involved, to actually take an active role. How do you initiate that conversation? And then how are you supporting those men when it feels really hard to even get them to take that first step?
Fabulous question. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that there's a wide range of folks out there. And I'm going to say that one of the things that I think is incredibly important is we have a problem focused society. We tend to look for where things aren't working. This is especially true. I do a lot of relationship mentoring. And in relationships, the tendency to be like, that you did that wrong, you did that wrong, that, and we put all this energy and focus on what's not working. What the way our brains work is what we focus on grows. So if we are focusing on all the ways that our partner is failing us or failing our child, we're giving that energy. And giving it energy is like watering those weeds. So instead, and I'm going to tell you, as someone who's been with my partner for 31 years, it is an ongoing practice. Okay. This is not something you just master. But I will, instead of doing that, practice catching them doing things right or doing things well. Put the energy on the things you want to see grow. Water the plants you want to get strong and to develop deep roots. So that means if a partner does takes on breakfast at some point, does something, you're like, I'm running to work, can you just do breakfast? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And they scramble to do it. And what they feed the child is not what you would feed the child. They're you're into like cottage cheese and fresh fruit, and they're pulling out canned baby food. Instead of acknowledging the ways that they didn't do it the way you would have done it, acknowledge that they did it. Speak to how they managed it. Highlight what's working. What was good about that? Speak to how it helped you. Highlight the success rather than the ways that they misstepped. Because what happens is our partners then want more of those cookies. They do. They like, it's good feeling. It's dopamine.
Yeah.
To have our beloved acknowledge what we're doing and hearing how it impacted their life, give them cookies. They'll want more.
So that could look like, thank you so much for feeding the baby. It literally made my morning so easy. Or thank you so much for handling that. You have no idea how much easier my morning was because you took that on.
Yes. Thanking is definitely a possibility. I would even make it a little less about them doing something that is otherwise yours
Okay.
and more about their relationship to the child and your relationship to them.
What would that sound
So,
like?
so that might be like, God, it was so sweet for me to see you feeding our baby. I just love watching you nurture him and feed him. And I see how much he loves it too.
You're such a good dad, or you're such a good mom.
Yeah. As specific as possible.
Mm.
So, as opposed to good this, good that, specific, because you're wanting to plant the seeds of what it is you want to see keep growing. So, it's when I came back in and you were talking to him, even though he was throwing baby food in his hair and you were just talking to him, it just made me melt.
It reminded
That,
me how patient you are. It
yeah,
reminded me how loving you are.
yeah, all those things can be helpful.
Hmm.
And then it can also be the part about you is the space of, wow, it means so much to me that I know you've got this and I can relax knowing that you've got this,
I do
even
think
if
there's
it's 10
something,
minutes.
yeah, I do think that there's something about men that they feel like they don't got this. And so when we're constantly overriding them, it just almost reassures them like, yeah, I don't got this. She can do it so much
Exactly.
better than me. Or
Exactly.
I'm just not that good of a dad. She's much better at this than I am. So I might as well just let her do it. And if we're constantly taking over from them, it's almost like shooting ourselves in the foot. We
It 100% is shooting ourselves in the
Right? We desperately
100%.
want them to take over, but we're never allowing them to do it. And so then they learn, I might as well not even try because she's just going to take over. And now you're in this nasty cycle of like, why won't he help? I'm not helping because you're going to take over. Why won't he help? I'm not helping because you're taking over. And you just can't, I mean,
Exactly.
you can get out of it, but it's hard.
Exactly. And it starts from day one. I'm going to actually say that differently. It starts in pregnancy.
Dive into that.
Yeah. It starts in pregnancy. It starts right now, where let's talk about you and your relationship and your pregnancy. Right here and right now, you have so much information and ideas and experience in pregnancy. Help your partner have a role. Help your partner be involved and included and have a say.
Yeah.
So that means that it can be things like, I know that I'm feeling really good about having a home birth, or maybe you've already talked about that. But the thing that you were speaking about earlier was about a doula or not a doula. And maybe there's an opportunity to talk with your partner. What is it that he needs
Mm-hmm.
in your birth journey?
Mm-hmm.
Might it be that he needs somebody to lean on and ask questions of and find out, hey, sweetie, when you think about being at birth, what do you think you will need? And how might you get that?
And what about the men who say either, I don't know, or nothing. This is really your thing. Because they need something. Nothing is really not the answer. So how are you pushing these men or these partners? I guess it's not male centric, probably more because men are just a little disconnected from their feelings, their emotions.
I've worked with a lot of partners of
Same-sex
various,
couples,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I've seen it all. Yeah.
how are we pushing these partners that are almost like not necessarily refusing, but they just won't think a little bit deeper?
So, first of all, I want to say that I don't push, I invite
Okay.
because it's different.
Okay.
Pushing tends to involve them pushing back.
Resistance.
Oh, yeah. If you push, they push back
Mm.
because they feel it. If you instead invite them, part of it is that there's so much expression in birth, in doula work, in childbirth education, in appointments with our providers, that is all centered on the one who is giving birth through their body, right? That person tends to be so centralized that partners are like, it's not about me. It's not about me. And they think that it not being about them is being supportive, because the one thing that they have been taught is that I need to be supportive. I need to be supportive. So if I don't have needs, I'm being supportive.
I'm centering her.
Right. And that is missing the point that this is their rite of passage as well. And part of their rite of passage into parenthood is having needs, supporting for sure, but also being involved as an active participant. They're awakening their inner parent, their father, their new parent self. And part of that is acknowledging that they have feelings too, acknowledging that they have needs, acknowledging they have fear. Oh, goodness. What if we let our partners have access to their fears? It matters.
Yeah.
They need it. And it will help them be better parents and better partners ultimately.
Yeah.
Birth is a watery experience. I talk about in my book, I use the metaphor of the river and the banks.
Yes. Let's dive into this.
So in my book, I talk about the river and the banks, that birth is like the river. It's the water. It's shifty, it's changey, it's like flowing hard. And sometimes it's just calm and just cruising down the path of the river. Other times the top is still, but underneath the current is dangerously strong.
Mm.
Birth is that changeability of that water. And what we need when we're in that changeability in that water is supportive and responsive banks. Somebody or somebodies who help contain and move with us as that water takes over. So that means when the water is calmer, that's often, you notice in rivers, the banks move further out. There's a little less there. But when it's rapids, it's like the banks tend to be in and tighter. And partners can be very helpful banks, where they're in there and they're like, I've got you. I'm here. You're splashy. That's all right. I'll move. Oh, okay. Oh, you need some space. I'll slide out. But what is also important to understand is that their experience is often pretty watery too.
Hmm.
And so banks reinforcement is often really helpful.
For them too.
For their being your banks, but they're watery. So if they slip into the river, and especially for somebody who is then trying, oh, my partner just got watery and emotional and had lots of things going on, often we pop out of the water and become more banksy to support them. And now you've got a swamp. And swamps don't go anywhere. They're stagnant. So when we are wanting to move energy, that polarity of watery energy and banks energy is helpful, because it allows for you're used to being banks at birth. You are banks energy. You are professional banker.
And I'm really good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really good at being that. And so I am afraid to step out of that role.
You're gonna step into the water and let your partner be the banks. But that isn't practiced for either of you at this point. You are a professional banker in birth. You hold banks so beautifully. And your partner knows that. And right now, as you start to move in the direction of preparing for your journey, and right now you're still in the we're in the beginning-ish part of it, but as you really start looking down the pathway toward birth and new parenthood, helping both of you practice you letting go, him stepping in, supporting and holding, and acknowledging that even if he's in a really strong banks position, this isn't something that he is a professional at. And having banks reinforcement, even if it's just by phone or text, can be valuable.
What would be some tangible examples that you could give to people listening, I mean, and myself, of how we can start to practice letting go, especially for type A women? I'm not even talking, I know a lot of you guys are not doulas out there, but you identify
Oh,
very much
yes.
like me. You're type A, you are the home manager, you are the leader in some regards in your family. And so, how can people like me and our listeners step back, become that watery, become that, I guess, almost that vessel that is just being and letting our partners actually step up, even if they're good at it. So, my husband is good at it. He does lead our family in a lot of ways, but you're right, not in this regard. And I would say that even if you're not a doula, whether you are or not, most men are probably not comfortable in the birth area. And so, tangibly in pregnancy, how are we actually practicing this?
Okay. So, some very specific things.
Please.
One, sit down, have a conversation, and share the mental load that is in your mind about what all the things are that you're thinking about leading up to birth. You're thinking about car seats, you're thinking about nursery, clothing, prep for labor and birth. You're thinking about infant CPR and first aid classes. You're thinking about lactation classes. You're thinking about childbirth ed. You're thinking about providers. You're thinking about pediatricians. The list.
Postpartum
Okay,
recovery, all of
right.
it, our
You're
identity,
thinking about postpartum recovery. You're
everything.
thinking about family and how to navigate family. Have a conversation, sit down and have a family meeting that is sharing the mental load of all of those things that you are thinking about, and discuss and look at who's going to do what. What on this list looks like something that you want to take on? Are you interested in researching car seats? Are you interested in researching strollers? I'm not saying go and buy it without checking in with me on it, but will you do all the research? What here looks good to you? And then let them, which is the hard part.
That's the big one. Yeah.
Okay, let them. And then it can be helpful to say things like, all right, let's put an alarm on our calendars that says we'll circle back around and check in on progress on such and such date, come back, see what the progress is, having something that is like it, because the feeling of, is this getting taken care of, can fester and is not good.
Totally.
But you are actively practicing, both of you, creating a more equitable relationship for the long term around parenting. So it's having a conversation and engagement about that together. And is that important to both of you? Because it isn't necessarily important for everybody. Not everybody wants a more equitable or a more engaged relationship in that way. There are absolutely couples who thrive in a very bifurcated way with the kids. That's their choice. But if it is something that matters to you, then start early. So that's one idea. Another tangible thing is I highly recommend practicing moving through discomfort together. I use ice in my classes. I talk about ice practices in my book. Do it. Don't just read about it. Don't just read about it. Do it. Practice with ice. What happens in that is how the one who's holding the ice gets to have that experience of how do I let go and receive their support? And the partner has to start to figure out, what do I do that's helpful? Because what tends to happen is the very first time in a class that a couple will hold ice, what tends to happen is they get done and they say, just be quiet.
That
just,
wasn't helpful.
just don't talk. Just don't talk. Don't touch me. Don't talk. Don't touch me. Don't talk. Don't do anything. Which is, I'll just do it myself.
Very thanky of you.
Exactly. And we know that most of the time, there comes a point in labor, birth, or early postpartum where we cannot do it ourselves. It is exceedingly rare to make it through all three of those without needing somebody. And so the practice of receiving help, their positive intention to support us, and build a practice of communicating in such a way that it builds our partner's confidence and competence is invaluable. It is so important. And so I say practice, 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 practice.
Practice pain relief measures too, right? So
that's what I'm saying is you're practicing with ice or with arm circles. You know, there's a bunch of yoga teachers in Los Angeles who like to do the thing where you put your arms out to the side and you do arm circles for a minute.
Okay.
There's different ways to do it. And finding ways to support yourself and receive support from your partner and building their capacity and capability to support you well really does engage them in the process.
Yeah.
It also, by the way, back to something we were talking about earlier, it helps it become more real for them that they are going to be experiencing something too.
Yeah. I find, so I've got two things to say that dropped into my head as you were talking. I find as a doula, I haven't done this with my husband yet, just because we're so new. We haven't quite made it to that stage yet. But as a doula, I find that I can relieve a lot of partners' anxieties about birth by giving them tangible things to do. So, yes, the ice, but also building their toolbox. Here are phrases that are helpful. Here are physical pain relief that are helpful. Here are 5 places in your home that if she looks uncomfortable, you can suggest those. Not all 5, but why don't you pick 2 and say, would you like this or this? And if she says no to both, then say, okay, would you like this or this? And by the time you get through all the places in your home, I bet you find something that feels good to her. The other thing that dropped into my head was I have found it helpful with my husband to give him, and this goes back to what you were saying, was like give them things that they can do. So I let my husband decide whether we're going to find the gender or not. I said, I don't care. You get to choose. This is your thing. I have so many strong opinions and so many strong feelings about what we do in this pregnancy because it is what I do every day. It is my body. I do feel like I'm very educated on this, but I want you to have some control too. The other thing is when he asks me questions that I don't know the answer to, I will empower him and say, you should write that down so you can ask the midwife. Not, I'm going to send a message in my chart to ask the midwife. Not, I'm going to text our home birth and ask, and she'll give us an answer. I want you to feel comfortable communicating with both our hospital team and our home
Love
birth
that.
team. Write that down. And the next time we see them, I want you to ask. I also have made it a practice that before we leave any appointment, I will turn to him and say, do you feel like you've asked all your questions? Is there anything else that's on your mind? And he usually says no. He is a very forward person, just like I am. And he usually says no. And I will say, are you sure you can? This is your time to ask really anything. And there's no dumb questions. There's nothing. So if you feel like you're holding back anything, this is the time. Sometimes he'll say, okay, I have been thinking about this. And I'm like, great, this is the time. We've got the professionals here. This is the time to talk
Love
about
it.
it. Let's do it. So those are just really, they came very naturally to me. And I know that's not true for everybody, but those are the little things that I've been able to naturally weave into our story that I think have given him a little bit more confidence and have empowered him to be really part of this story. Another thing that I have really instilled in him is that you're the authority here. I'm not going to be in a mental space to be the authority. So if you ever feel like, okay, we've reached a place where we're not safe and our home birth midwives are saying we still don't need to transfer, I want you to come to me and say, I think we need to transfer, even though that's not the recommendations of our midwives. I want you to feel the authority to not only override them, but to have a conversation, even if you don't feel the permission from our medical team, because you and I, this is our baby. This is our story. They are our guides, but they are not our authority. And it has taken multiple conversations with him to really get him on that page because we're hiring them. And I'm like, I know that, but they are our guides. They are our confidants. We are hiring them for their expertise, but you and I are the parents of this child and we live with this birth story, not them. And so it's just, for me, that was something that was really important, especially being around other births and seeing how births can go every which way. I wanted him to really feel the authority that you don't need permission to either say something or bring something to me or make a decision for us. You have just as much authority as anybody else in the room. And I often feel like men don't feel that way. They feel like I'm not a woman. I'm not giving birth. I'm not the doctor. So I should just sit back and be quiet, even when their intuition is telling them I should speak up. I should say something. I should transfer my wife.
I think I absolutely want to double tap on all of what you're saying and say that talking about it is one thing.
Okay.
And what you're saying about what you're asking and having him do in the appointments and with direct conversation is the practice.
Hmm.
Because saying something, you get to say things. You get to say things in our birth. You are an advocate for you, and your husband are advocates for your child until they know how to advocate for themselves. And they will learn how to advocate for themselves by watching the two of you advocate on their behalf. And that begins, it's already begun.
Yeah.
It's already begun. And so the reminding is helpful, the practice is valuable.
Hmm.
So, what you're doing, the practice in the appointments, in the direct texting and communicating, that is actual practice. And my belief is that embodied learning is what sticks, especially when you are in a situation that is high emotion, makes the ability to access all of what's inside our neocortex a little harder.
Jumbled up.
It's a little harder. There's a lot of emotions going on. There's a lot of adrenaline and cortisol, and it makes us more animal, less human. And
Hmm.
so, if we can learn from a place of motor practice, learning with the body in a more animal sense, it's easier when we're in a more animalistic state because of the nature of the hormones for both of you in birth because of stress and joy. It makes this cloudier. And so being able to practice in an embodied way so that the animal of our being remembers matters, deeply matters. So I love that you are practicing with him in your appointments with your care provider, in questions that he has. The more you can step back and invite his experience in, the more his rite of passage has space to be experienced.
Oh my gosh, that's gonna make me cry just thinking about him becoming a dad. I love it so much. Okay, I could talk to you all day, but
We
we gotta
hardly talked about
I
birth.
know, I know. Maybe I might have to have you back on the podcast. And I also, through this conversation, I wanted to invite him on the podcast, and maybe the three of us could sit down and we could talk together, maybe later in pregnancy. But I wanted to bring
I
up
would love
my
that.
favorite
That would be
part.
super fun.
Oh, good. Okay. I'll ask if he's willing. He's a little bit more reserved in the online space than I am. He doesn't
I
really.
understand.
Yeah, I totally get that too. I get that. And I respect that. And it is one of the things I love so much about him. Okay, one of my favorite parts of your book, and it was just something that put a tangible, like, metaphor to something that I've known, to something that we all feel, something that I've witnessed for a decade as a doula, is the idea of Artemis and Apollo. So explain that to us. I'm not even going to attempt it because I know you'll do so much more of an eloquent job than I will, but it is from the entire book. It is what stuck with me the most. And it was the first chapter that I flagged for my husband to read. I was like, this is it. He has to read this. It just so beautifully lays out the masculine and feminine, the tug and the pull, and the ebbs and the flows, and the yin and the yang of birth.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, I'm a mythologist. I love mythology, and the power of metaphor is connected to what we were just talking about around the neocortex and the animal, because we think that the human is from the head up and the animal is some of the rest of it. And it's really powerful when we have metaphors and symbols and stories that can connect when our neocortex is offline. So I use a lot of metaphors. And one of the metaphors is this one that you spoke to, which is about the Greek god twins, Artemis and Apollo. So Artemis is often referred to as one of the Greek goddesses of childbirth. There's actually a more lesser known goddess that is like about labor, but Artemis's domain is childbirth. And a lot of folks think that she is the goddess of childbirth because she was the first twin born to their mother, who immediately upon being born midwifed her mother through the birth of her twin, Apollo. So there she is, Artemis, midwife, supporter of birth. It's much deeper than that, because Artemis is the goddess of the wilderness. Artemis represents all of what we think about as outside the bounds of civilization. She likes darkness. She communicates with animals. Baby animals are her specialty. And so she likes to think of the ways and sounds of the forest. It's howls, it's moans, it's grunts, it's close down kind of the earth. That's Artemis's domain. And she is a moon goddess, which speaks a little bit to the cyclical nature that is also associated with childbirth and mystery. The moon changes. Darkness has shadows. And that is really a lot about birth. There's a lot of mystery. And some of the stories about Artemis, some of the stories about Artemis can be pretty intense. But one of them speaks about a hunter who spies on Artemis without her permission. And this is not okay. And Artemis spites him and causes some real issues there. And in that, it speaks to how fiercely she protects her privacy, which is also true of the laboring body. And we got to remember that Artemis is part of a twin. Her twin is Apollo, and Apollo represents all the things about society that we love and respect. Like, he is the god of music and poetry, those things that are like the highest example of being human. Not only is poetry language, it's like elevated language. He is associated with law and order. He is a sun god, so he likes things clear and bright and organized. He would love a good to-do list and a calendar that is detailed out. Very, very Apollo. He'd be very happy with that. He's everything that is inside the bounds of civilized society. His sun is also the god of medicine. So he is associated with medicine. Now, I know you have listeners from all over the world, and in Western culture, modern Western culture is highly Apollonian, more Apollonian today than it's ever been. We've got encyclopedic levels of knowledge in our back pocket, actually beyond encyclopedic levels of information. I grew up in a house with encyclopedias, and there was like one page on birth. We now have access to the entire web about birth. So we love organization and clarity and control. And that is Apollo's domain. But let's remember, they are two parts because they are twins. They are together. And so there is value in each. I put a lot of focus on Artemis because Artemis represents much of what is needed in labor, birth, and new parenthood. It is wild. It is unpredictable. It exists in that wilderness. And the word that most responds to, that I think of particularly with Artemis, is untamed.
I love that.
Untamed. So now, and we are lucky because we also have the gifts of Apollo's realm. I mean, hospitals are temples to Apollo. They are brightly lit, they are organized, they have hierarchical structure, they are clear, they have order. These things are, I mean, they truly are like temples to Apollo. And that has value. And the birthing body is over in Artemis's realm. That wilderness, that unpredictable. So that matters too.
Oh my gosh. When I read it, I was just like, this so beautifully describes my husband and I, which is why I flagged it, because he is in medicine and he is very organized and he is very analytical and logistical. And I am the untamed, mysterious one. I'm the one that's unpredictable and I follow my gut intuition, and we are such a strong couple because of that. I think we have a very good balance. We are the yin and the yang. And when he's being just too analytical, I'm able to pull him back and say, you're being too much. And when I'm not being thoughtful enough, he is able to pull me back and say, I love you so much, but what you're doing is a little reckless. We should think a little bit deeper about this decision. And I don't know. That chapter just spoke to me
Um,
so much.
yeah, it's powerful. And one of the things
Yeah.
that you can utilize about that is that you have an analytical, you have an Apollonian side. Frankly, we all do.
Okay.
Unless you live on a farm or in the forest and are close to the earth on the regular, which some people are,
Mhm.
but if you are living in a city, you are definitely highly connected to the Apollonian side of yourself. So, one of the things that can be helpful is that heading into that Artemisian realm of birth can feel scary. It can feel like letting go of control. It can feel like advancing into a space that is unpredictable, because one of the key words of the wilderness is unpredictable. And so it can unsettle the part of us that has felt held by the Apollonian order of our lives. Taking some time and nourishing our Artemisian side, that intuitive side, like you're speaking to, and getting out in nature while pregnant is something I absolutely recommend. Like, sit down in the dirt, right? And get messy. Let life get a little messy. I promise you that when you have children, your life will be a little messier.
Might as well practice now.
It will be a little bit messier. And if there's an element of practice, not necessarily just to let it be super messy, but practice your capacity to be okay in the face of the messy.
Hmm.
That's the practice. It's, yeah, okay, this wasn't quite how I wanted it to be. I'm going to practice expanding my capacity to be okay, even when things go a little sideways.
Yeah.
That's stepping into the order of the wilderness. Because even though the wilderness looks like it has no order and it's chaotic and things grow in weird ways, there is something that's happening there that makes sense. It's just not Apollonian order. It's Artemisian. It's wilder. It's untamed. And expanding our ability to be okay in the light of it helps us in parenthood, because I can guarantee you, babies come out as Artemisian elements. We teach them about their Apollonian side, but they are not connected to it when they come out. They're in their animal self, not their human self.
Hmm. I love that. I do love how you emphasize that we have and need both. They
Yeah.
work together because I think that in birth, a lot of times, especially in opposing views, you can have people who believe that the
Apollonian. Yeah.
Apollonian way is the right way. And then you have a subset of people who believe that the Artemisian way is the right way. And I think it's really important. And it's a balance that I try and strike, that you can be drawn to one or the other while keeping respect for the opposite and recognizing that there is a place for both. And that's how we actually have a really joyous birth. That's how we prevent birth trauma. That's how we have empowered experiences that open us up to what birth is trying to transform us into.
That's right. Because on the other side of birth is parenthood.
Mm.
And parenthood absolutely demands connection with both of those, because society is 100% holding the energy of the Apollonian. It's the fact that we are sitting here speaking together through technology at a scheduled time on the calendar, and this is going to be launched on a particular day that people can land. We are just drinking in the water of Apollo's realm. And
Mm.
our children are untamed. expressions of wild. And they test us when we're used to being very ordered. So there's a value in having relationship with both beyond understanding it with regard to labor and birth, but in remembering that labor and birth are part of the rite of passage into the space on the other side that is parenthood.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. I still have a million questions for you, but we don't have time. I'm gonna have to have you back on the show. I would love to do an episode with my husband. Maybe the three of us can sit down. Dr. Britta, really, thank you so much. Thank you for letting me be raw and cry. Thank you for letting me share my fears. Thank you for letting me ask you the questions that I think are on so many of our minds. But not only do we not know where to find the answers, but many of us don't have somebody in our life that has this wisdom and can guide us through these things. And also for giving us permission and allowing us to understand that it's okay to be in that and space, that you can experience two different things. Things are allowed to coexist, even if they feel or they are perceived as opposites. It's okay for us to be there and exist there and to just feel. So, thank you so much. If people wanted to learn from you, work with you, connect with you, get your book, if they're parents, if they're pregnant, if they're looking for childbirth classes, if they're doulas looking for mentorship, where do people connect with you and learn from you?
First, thank you so much. It's been really a pleasure. And I'm tickled and grateful that we got to have this conversation when you're in this juicy spot in your own life. So, thank you so much for bringing your vulnerability and your wisdom and your strength, because those all matter on this path that you are on now as a mom.
Thank you.
So thank you. And how to get to know my work, follow my work. My book is Transformed by Birth, and it's available in paperback wherever books are sold. And it's also available in audiobook. And I read the audiobook, so you get to hear this voice in the audiobook. I have an online childbirth prep class. I do in-person deep immersive classes in Los Angeles. I run a apprenticeship for birth professionals that goes really deep into kind of unpacking these various tools that I use in my work: resilience work, rites of passage, storytelling, myth and metaphor, ritual and ceremony. All of those things pull together into this program. And I'm on all the socials at Britta Bushnell, PhD. So I think I got them all. I think that's, oh, and my website. My website is brittabushnell.com. It's just brittabushnell.com. And the one other thing I'll say is that I recommend signing up for my newsletter. I send it out weekly, and I share a lot about parenthood and pregnancy and some of my own journey as a new grandma, and I put a lot into my newsletter. So I hope people will also get that.
Oh my gosh. And y'all know that I'll link everything in the show notes for you so that you can get connected with Dr. Britta. You guys, don't be afraid to dig deep. I want you to allow pregnancy to crack you wide open. I want you to get vulnerable with yourself, with your partner, with your baby, connect with your body. Don't be afraid to lean into that Artemian side of yourself. It's okay that we live in the Apollo side, but step out of that. Make sure that you're finding that balance. Don't go into birth one-sided. Make sure that you're really, really leaning into the things that make you uncomfortable, the things that you have questions about, the things that feel mysterious to you. You don't always need to have complete control. It's okay to just let go and let birth be what it's going to be. It's okay to let your pregnancy lead you in certain regards. Oh, you guys, this episode was way more than I ever could have imagined. I just feel so grateful that you're here with us. And I feel so grateful that you guys all show up every single week. I love hanging out with y'all so much. And I'll see you in the next episode. Be sure to follow Dr. Britta on social media, and you can find me at Tranquility by HeHe and at the.birth.lounge. Until next time, head to your app store and download the Birth Lounge app for evidence-based childbirth education and data-driven postpartum support delivered straight to your phone. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I love hanging out with you, and it is an honor to be your go-to gal when it comes to preparing for your baby. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please leave a 5-star review and tell others why they should be listening to the Birth Lounge podcast too. You deserve to have a birth that you love with a provider that values your autonomy and respects informed consent without all the trauma that you so commonly hear about on social media. New episodes air every Wednesday and Friday. Hit that follow button so you never miss an episode. I'm HeHe, and this is the Birth Lounge Podcast.